The 90s might be the best looking decade in horror history. Not the scariest, certainly not the bloodiest, but visually, nothing comes close. The 90s is untouchable. Before CGI flattened everything, before horror went grey and desaturated, there was a brief window where directors were building massive sets, lighting real fire, and pushing practical effects to their absolute limit. And the results look better today than most modern horror, which is kinda sad. So let's break down the 5 most visually insane horror films of the 1990s, and why their style still hits harder than anything streaming right now. Dusk Till Dawn. Directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Quentin Tarantino, this movie is 2 genres violently stitched together. The first half, dusty crime thriller, sun-bleached yellows, naturalistic lighting, handheld grit. Then we enter the titty twister, and this is when the entire visual language just mutates. We got greens, neon reds, and dusty looking orange, flickering firelight, faces underlit like campfire ghost stories. Rodriguez switches from grounded realism to grindhouse nightmare without even easing you in. And here is why it works. Everything is practical. The vampire transformations are all latex, animatronics, mechanical rigs. Blood hits the walls physically. Bodies are exploding in camera, there's weight to it. The bar feels alive, smoky air, textured stone, crowded frames. The visuals aren't polished, they're chaotic, and that chaos becomes the aesthetic of the rest of the movie. This is why, when you change from a nice little crime thriller to something balls to the wall horror, this is how it's done, and it's absolutely beautiful. Dracula. Francis Ford Coppola didn't want realism, he wanted a myth, so he avoided CGI almost entirely. Instead, he used old school camera tricks, forced perspective, miniatures, shadow play, double exposure, and one of the best things about this is he actually fired the visual effects guy for the movie. And the reason was, well, the visuals and the style that Francis wanted to go for, he said he couldn't do it. So they fired him, and Francis hired his own son to do it. And it worked out extremely well. And the result of all of this? A beautiful gothic opera. The color palette is extreme. We got crimson reds, midnight blues, and we also got candlelit gold. And then there's Gary Oldman. In my eyes, the greatest actor to ever portray the Count. He brings so many different looks to the rich history of Dracula, and each style we got so many great looking things. The red armor silhouette looks inhumane. The aging Count is draped in flowing fabric that exaggerates his presence. We then have him looking all suave and sophisticated when he's walking around old London town. But the best thing about all of this? When you see him and his shadows act independently from his body, Coppola turns horror into theatrical spectacle. It feels artificial, but intentionally so, like you're watching a cursed stage performance. And because it's all practical and in camera, it still looks handcrafted and beautiful today, over 30 years later. Interview with a Vampire. If Dracula is theatrical excess, this is gothic decadence. Directed by Neil Jordan and adapted from Anne Rice's novel, this film builds horror through atmosphere, not spectacle. The lighting is soft but oppressive. Candlelight flickers against velvet and silk. Faces glow against near total darkness, which is absolutely amazing and still, again to this day, 30 years later, looks impeccable. And it just looks so good. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are framed like Renaissance paintings. Beautiful, tragic, but isolated. The production design is very dense as well. Heavy drapery, ornate coffins, fog-choked graveyards. And what makes it visually powerful is the contrast. Elegance versus decay. Immortality versus rot. The horror creeps in quietly through stillness and shadow. It's a romantic horror, but it's very, very suffocating. Dark City. This might be the most underrated visual achievement of the 90s. Directed by Alex Proyas, Dark City builds an entire nightmare metropolis. The film never sees daylight. Architecture stretches unnaturally. Staircases twist. Buildings reshape mid-scene. It looks like Inception, but done nearly a decade and a half before Inception, you know? It's heavily inspired as well by German expressionism, exaggerated angles, harsh lighting, and extreme shadow. We do get faces which are half submerged in darkness. The city feels artificial because, well, it is artificial. And that artificially becomes the horror of the movie. Reality looks unstable. The scale is oppressive. And because so much of it was built physically, this world feels tangible, even when it's bending. This is existential horror expressed through production design. And the designs were so good, they were reused for The Matrix, which in my eyes is the greatest looking movie of the entire decade. Event Horizon. This is industrial gothic horror at maximum intensity. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, Event Horizon takes the haunted house concept and launches it into deep space. But the spaceship isn't sleek sci-fi. It's a cathedral. Gothic arches, spiked corridors, metal hallways shaped like crucifixes. The production design blends medieval religious imagery with brutal and beautiful looking industrial machinery. And the lighting? Relentless and very, very harsh. We got deep blacks. Shadows swallow entire rooms. Steam fills the frame constantly as well, and when the hell imagery finally appears, rapid cuts, distorted faces, violent flashes, it all feels very invasive, overwhelming. The visuals don't invite you in, they trap you. And that oppressive atmosphere is why this film still feels aggressive nearly 30 years later. And to me, still one of the most underrated horror movies ever made. 90s still look better when matched against some horror movies made in the last decade, and here's the pattern why. All of these films committed to physicality. We got real sets, we have real lighting like I have by here, real texture. Filmmakers in the 90s were bold as hell. Directors weren't afraid of saturated colours, of theatrical framing, or even stylization. Modern horror often aims now for muted realism. Everything has the neutral colour, greys, whites, blacks. But 90s horror? They aimed for impact. And because of that, these films don't just look nostalgic, they look intentional, they look crafted, and most of all, they look alive. Which is why I absolutely love 90s horror. But now I want to know, what's the best looking horror film of the 90s in your opinion? Did I miss one? And if you enjoy breaking down horror films from a visual perspective, hit the subscribe button folks, because we're just getting started. I'll see you in the next video. Sleep well.